All right, 10 minutes before the top of the hour. Lawrence is live in Washington.
Hey, Steve, great interview. A live look at Gaza City as America's bravest ally continues. Live look at Gaza. Israeli counterstrikes continue just moments ago. The IDF announced that sirens are sounding across central Israel, a very fluid situation across the country. Our next guest knows all about fighting war against terrorism firsthand. GOP Senator Tom Cotton served in Afghanistan and sits on the Senate Armed Services Committee. He joins us now. Senator, I want to talk about this $6 billion and the president's speech yesterday. A lot of heart there, so I commend him for that, addressing what's going on in Israel. But he did not address the state's #1 sponsor of terrorism, which is Iran.
Yeah, Iran is the world's worst state sponsor of terrorism. Hamas wouldn't exist in the scale and the brutality that it does without Iran's support. And President Biden just last month freed up $6 billion to Iran to use. Now, it may be the case that it hasn't been released yet or it's being held offshore, but that obviously emboldened Iran that America would pay ransom for 5 American hostages. And it freed up $6 billion of their own money to continue to support groups like Hamas and Hezbollah. And, you know, they spent the weekend saying how not a penny of that money has been spent. Well, that's great news. That means that we can refreeze the money and not send it to Iran. I'm very worried that they refuse to answer that simple question, that it suggests that, in fact, they can't plan to go forward with that foolish decision and allow Iran to access that $6 billion, just like they're allowing Iran to ship tens of billions of dollars worth of oil by not enforcing sanctions. All that money is doing is fueling Iran's campaign of terror across the region.
What is the holdup on freezing the money?
Yeah, I can't imagine why they're refusing to say they're going to freeze it now unless they simply don't want to. They want to continue with the failed Obama-Biden policy of conciliating with Iran, of appeasing Iran, of trying to elevate Iran to achieve some kind of false balance in the Middle East between Iran on the one hand and Israel and its Arab friends on the other hand. What we need right now is strength and resolution. We need to stand by Israel, and we need to make it clear to Iran and Hezbollah and Hamas that we will not tolerate this kind of atrocity that we've seen in Israel.
Senator, we're looking at live footage right now in Gaza City and the shelling that's going on. And there's been this effort, and you've served, you know what happens at war, but you already see it in some of the media, and you see some of it in liberal publications, to paint Israel as the enemy and the bullies. Can you explain to us the goal of Hamas from a propaganda standpoint?
Well, Hamas's very charter says it's dedicated to the destruction of Israel and the death of Jews. Look what happened over the weekend. Babies beheaded, women raped and mutilated in the streets, families burned alive to terrorize Israel. And Hamas is not just a terrorist group, it's also a governing entity that purports to govern Gaza, which is larger than some sovereign nations, which has 2 million people. What Israel has to do is what we did to Imperial Japan or Nazi Germany after Pearl Harbor. It has to completely destroy Hamas as a terrorist group, as a governing entity, and as a social movement. Anything less will leave Israel exposed in the future to exactly this kind of brutal atrocity. It'll also signal that if we don't back up Israel in their campaign to destroy Hamas, signal even more to Iran and its proxies, to say nothing of China and Russia, that the United States is not strong and resolute in the defense of our friends and our own citizens, since we had more than a dozen Americans killed and a couple dozen apparently are missing or held hostage.
Senator, I only got about 15 seconds. At what point should America's armed forces be involved in this conflict?
Well, Israel always wants to fight its own wars, but we should provide them every support they need, not just in missiles and rockets and other munitions, but mission planning and intelligence and so forth. We also may need American forces to help liberate our citizens. Those are our responsibility. They're not Israel's responsibility, they're America's responsibility.
Yeah, we can't have another Caleb Mueller situation. Senator, thanks so much for joining the program. I'll send it over to you, Steve, Ainsley, and Brian.
All right. Lawrence, thank you very much.